to order this computer.
Okay, there we go. Okay,
That
all
was the button.
right.
Technology.
So I'm gonna.
Oh, that's right. I can move. this.
No, I can do this. That's fine. I mean, sometimes I go back and forth, and so it's
Okay.
fine. Okay. Wow. Well, thank you guys for being here. I actually wrote some things out because I haven't done this for a while. I taught at Austin P for 38 years, and I retired the day I turned 65. It was my 68th commencement, and I said farewell. And I loved my career. I loved teaching, but I was ready to have more time for my own work. And anyway, so but I love teaching, so I've been teaching some workshops, a few in-person workshops. I taught online some Zoom classes during COVID, and that was a learning process to, have a Slack platform and Zoom meetings. So but it was all good. And so I just wanted to let you know how honored and privileged I felt to be asked to do this, to your annual juried exhibit. And the task, I haven't juried a lot of exhibits. I've juried a lot of student exhibits at universities. But, the task of selection that, falls to the juror, in this case, the quality was so high. I mean, the technical quality, the combination of technical quality and meaningful content made it, really difficult. And I think I was sent 150 images and asked to get it down to 30 and give or take a few, but I did edit to 30. And, as an educator and artist myself, I've been on both sides of this process. The one critiquing and selecting and grading, though thank goodness that's one thing I don't have to do anymore. And I've also been on the side of applying for juried shows and getting that letter in the mail that says thank you very much, but ... So I mean, over the 42 years since I started entering shows, I could probably wallpaper my bedroom with rejection letters. So anyway, so I know that the job of a juror is a subjective process. I mean, it really sort of has to be. In my mind, the guidelines, the sort of the call for entry that Emily and I talked about, seems like years ago, but months ago, with that in my mind, I really sort of rely on my gut, and it comes to like seeing an image that I've never seen before. And obviously, I've never seen any of the images that I was jurying, but what I mean is I'd never seen an image like that image. Like I think we all crave new visual experiences. There's so many photos sometimes you see and you say, oh yeah, I saw that. I walked down the wall, whatever, greeting card aisle, and I've seen a dozen that look just like that. So we're bombarded by photographs like all day, and advertisement on billboards, on the internet. And so to see something unique that makes me think, that makes me feel, that keeps me going back to look at it again, that's it, that engages me. I guess that's the best verb to use. It's looking at, of course, a wide range of styles and approaches to photography, from documenting in a straightforward manner of people, places, and things, and also images that act as metaphors for human emotions, which I refer to as visual poetry. I didn't make that up, but when I was preparing for this, I stopped to think about something that I used to teach, talk to my students about, which is the concept of mirror and windows. And this was, Mirrors and Window is an exhibit at MoMA in 1978, curated by John Sarkowski, who was then I think he was the second curator there after Edward Steichen. And so he put together this exhibit, and then a book was published after it in 1978 called Mirrors and Windows. And the concept was that he was sort of talking about photography having two sort of parallel but different approaches. One, a photograph as a window, direct observation, or as a mirror, introspective narrative. Or what I used to tell my students, because those words, sometimes it's just like, what do you mean? Is that either one might use the camera as a window through which to see the world that's out there and capture it, or use the camera as a mirror to reflect inward to capture what's in here. And, I don't think that a person, excuse me, my allergies are bothering me. I don't think that a person necessarily chooses to be a mirror or a window. I think it just happens. And even over a period of time, I mean, you may switch from one to another. So about this show, from March 2020 till today, still basically, we're living in this time of an uncertainty that's filled with chaos and loss and courage and life and death and beauty and horror and sorrow and joy, and artists across the planet are being challenged to consider our personal and our collective response to what's going on. And it's, this term has been thrown around a lot lately, but liminal space and liminal time. But I really learned to understand it during this. It sort of translates as to no longer, but not yet, where you feel like you're sort of in this, place, like you think you have a routine going and then it changes. It's like, now it's like this. And next week, now it's like this. And, we're not the first people to live through a period of crises like we are, but, it may be, at least for many of us, the first time we've really been affected as much as we all have. So, how to make photographs about an experience of so I wanted to share with you, before I get started, the first assignment that I would give to my photo students in photo 1, I called Toolbox. And it had to do with the 4 things that I feel are the most important and possibly unique to photography. And I would add cinematography. And that is light, vantage point, depth of field, and time. And so I would have the students first, go out and make light the subject matter of their photograph. And the subject matter actually could be anything, but the light, or what the light was doing, or the lack of light, or something about the light became the major part of the content. Vantage point, just the idea that we don't have to take everything at between 5 and 7 feet, looking at the horizon. That, with the onset of the 35mm camera, and the 29, 30, Cartier-Bresson and Cortez, began looking, being able to not be chained to a tripod and be able to look down and look up and look through and look past, and then depth of field, it's just to me a huge control that photographers have over, deciding if they want everything sharp and in focus, or if they want a narrow depth of field to create a focal point in that way. And then time, whether we choose to capture a split second, or whether we choose to blur by either moving the camera or photographing something that's moving with a slow shutter speed. So I think, in this exhibit, these 30 examples of photographs that I'm going to share with you all, each in their own way, and during this time are inviting the viewer to consider their own response to this changing world. So this was, these were the images Emily asked me for. And then I was looking for an image to put as a kind of a header that was long and narrow, and I found one. Is Gerald here?
No, he couldn't come.
Okay. But there was something about this.
On the Zoom.
He might be on the Zoom.
No, the pictures aren't
it's
showing on the
not.
Zoom.
Oh,
So you gotta,
It's just showing the TV.
see, I don't know if you shared the screen.
no, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. And then,
Okay, now
now go,
That's why, because I can see what they're seeing.
there we go.
okay. So do you want to
Yeah, I can-
advance that one?
Okay. I can do
Okay.
it. All right.
All right. So anyway, I picked this one of Gerald's because I really loved this feeling of transitioning from this photo studio, to, I imagine that's him, the blurred figure, to the computer screens, and it just for me captured this feeling of change, of time, passing from one period to another. So I thought I would start with the three that I selected for the PR, and I selected them in part that if I felt that they really sort of captured that essence of the call for entry, but also, since they were going to be used on social media and posters and things like that, images that would hold up, at a small size. So I'll start with Rick's, and I mean, this image to me captures. I have I suffer with intermittent vertigo. And yeah, so I mean, even just looking at it, I may have to just like shield my eyes. But this feeling of spinning and feeling out of control and feeling like it's just all there. I mean, to me, it captures the chaos and the feeling out of control. And so that was my reason.
I will mention that Rick is here.
Yes, that's right.
All the three that you picked.
Oh, good.
are here.
Okay. I met Rick when we hung the show. Yeah. So, and we talked a little bit about this. And then Diane is here. Yes. So this image, it just, gosh, I mean, the combination of the gesture, which, we all recognize that now, like 3 years ago, I mean, a fist bump to me was something my 12-year-old did with his buddies, with his friends. But the combination of that gesture and the visual elements, it's almost like, she asked this guy would you put on these orange shoes and carry this and then stand there and then let me balance this. I mean, it just looks, and it reminds me of some of the best of Cartier-Bresson, where, he really was taking, the people weren't aware that he was photographing them, and yet he could construct a composition just like in a split second. And I think that's, what really drew me to this one. Just, I don't know, everything about it. The mask, so good. And Sharon, hey, and this I also absolutely love. I mean, where do I start? The color is, so I use the word yummy sometimes for color, but and succulents are plants that are survive in the desert, and yet this one, and I forgot, I was going to look at the titles. I did put the oh, I've got them. Yeah, so actually, let me go back to this. Okay, so Rick's was The Coming Storm. Yeah, it's great. And, that was something that my students had a real hard time doing, was titling. And I do too. I hate titling my work. And sometimes, if images are really abstract and the content is simply the elements, the shapes and lines and textures, and like Stieglitz's Sky series, he just numbered them, equivalent number 32 or equivalent number 64. And so they didn't have words attached to them. And yet, when you put a work out that's untitled, it's kind of like an untitled book or an untitled film. You've got to give a little bit of something without, telling the viewer too much. So anyway, I did write down the titles because I just wanted to make that point. And Fist Bump, great, and Still Standing. So yeah, I mean, this withered part of the plant down there with the growth at the top. It just captures, for me, life and death, and the both exist, and both are beautiful. Is Sandy here? So I love this image too. I first square images I'm often drawn to, and it may be that I shot with a twin lens reflex camera for a long time, and so I just learned to love the square. And the blue, I mean, blue is a cool color. It's a calming color. They've done studies of, actually putting people in different rooms with, like, one room painted a warm, like orange or yellow, and one room with a cool blue or green, and that people would, even at the same temperature, say that they felt either warmer or cooler based on the color. And I only know this because I taught art appreciation for 20 years, and these little tidbits stick in my mind. But I don't know how the movement was done, and I actually might ask you.
It was ICM.
Okay. Well, I didn't even know that was a thing until I came to hang the show. And meaning I know what, intentional camera movement was, but I hadn't heard it, like the acronym of it. So yeah, I mean, it's this combination of the stillness, this, of the composition with the movement happening here. It's those polarities that are happening that I'm drawn to. And that was Across the Lake, and this is After the Rain. And this one too, it's this combination of this beautiful flower that, you know, is weighted down by the rain, the droplets of water looking almost like tears. I mean, there's just something so moving about that to me, and moving in an emotional way. Is Keith here?
He may be on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Hi,
Yeah.
Keith. So Airwalker, I loved, first of all, the vantage point. I mean, when I talk about looking up, I mean, this definitely puts us, the viewer, down somewhere, you know, looking up at this, perhaps a glass floor, you know, I don't know, but it even though that person is out of focus, he or she, but probably he, has the power, you know. And so camera angle, you know, anytime you're photographing a person and the camera's down here and the person's up there, like in Citizen Kane, you know, that person is given a sense of power, and the opposite being true. If you're photographing somebody and the camera's up here and they're down there, there's a different kind of relationship between the viewer and the person. But this was just really interesting to me. You know, it's like I want to ask, like, how did you do this? Where was it? And I don't really have to know the answers. I can just sort of enjoy the mystery of this shadow figure walking. Anyway, what's it called? Airwalker. Yeah. And then this one also of Keats, the door. It's just, I mean, it's very painterly, and you know, that's a term that people throw around a lot, but you know, it's used when a photograph looks, you know, like a painting. That the softness of the, you know, everything. I don't think there's any really sharp line in there. Everything is soft. The color is just so minimal. There's this blue, and then these little bits of kind of warm hues in there. And to me, it looks like a curtain. You know, it wasn't until I saw the title. I mean, I think maybe it is a curtain too, but when I saw the title, it said door, then I was looking, but on my laptop, it's a little harder to see than it is here, you know. Okay, and now I see that there's these steps here that's kind of leading us up into this unknown darkness. And then Rick's, I'm sorry, is it Calming? Yes, is that the title? Calming. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? The opposite, you know, when a horizontal is sort of the main line in the composition, like Across the Lake, there's kind of a sense of calm, even though things were moving. There's a sense of calm. When a vertical is the main line in the composition, there's usually a translation of like strength and permanence. And even though this is moving water, the verticalness of it, if I can turn that into a word, the verticalness of it gives it this feeling of power and height. And you know, that's deciding whether to photograph, especially in a landscape, but also people, you know, whether you want to, you know, going to turn it vertical, horizontal, diagonal, you know, those are choices that the photographer makes that can change, you know, a lot about how the viewer responds. And so with people's work in which I chose two, and I guess you guys already know this, but these were blindly juried. So when I was selecting them, I didn't know if I was selecting more than one of any person's work, but there are about 3 of you. I think that there are 3 or 4. And so I wanted to put the 2 together just to sort of see if there's a similarity in the voice or in the content. And I think here there's this nice sort of thing. I mean, both of them involve movement, but one is this kind of, I don't know, just this very, I mean, it's powerful, but it's also just very serene, you know, this waterfall. And the other one is, you know, making me dizzy. So, but it's interesting that both of these pieces involved, you know, something moving. And a slow shutter speed, and I assume also a somewhat slow shutter speed. Okay, so Joe's first one is treble clef. I can't pronounce the other. Is it French? Italian. Well, I don't know what I can say about this one. This is an image that I have to say when I first saw it, and this is a compliment to anybody I ever say it to. I wish I had made that. Yeah. And you know, it's okay. One of my favorite books. It's a little book. You can get it on Amazon for like $10. It's called Steal Like an Artist. If you don't know it, get it. Even just for the quotes. There's lots of great quotes. But it really talks about how, you know, I mean, every idea has been done before. I mean, when I set out to start making collodion plates in the South, I thought, well, Sally Mann's already done it. Why should I bother? I mean, she's done it beautifully. And look at these books. And then I had to stop and think, but I haven't done it yet. And so it's hard to get over that sometimes when we think, you know, oh, you know, so-and-so has already done that, whatever. But I am really drawn to this kind of softness, also painterly. The background, you know, either is this, it looks like either fog or high humidity or moisture of some sort that in addition has been thrown out of focus by using a wide aperture and focusing on the plant. Is that somewhat correct? Okay. It's just, I don't know, there's just something about it. I oftentimes use my hands, and maybe that's one of the reasons I collect and photograph hands. I'm always fascinated watching people talk with their hands. And anyway, so, and second, forest evolving. So another one similar to what I felt about After the Rain, this sort of combination of death and beauty, you know, what remains of these trees, and then, you know, what's behind the dead ones is life, you know, are the ones behind them, you know, are leafing out. And I like that, you know, the amount of detail in these trees, and then the out of focus foreground and the out of focus background. So was that done, can I ask you, just with a wide aperture and a selective focus, or was there? Oh, okay. Lens baby, I forget about those. They're fun. So you can tilt. Yeah, you can swivel and tilt, and it's kind of like, do you know Keith Carter's work? Yeah, so he has, you know, he uses a Hasselblad, but he, you know, has this lens attached to it that has bellows, so he can swivel and tilt, and he can select his area of focus, not based on near to far, but based on where, you know, he wants the focus by swiveling and tilting. And lens babies do that too, and are much cheaper than a Hasselblad with an old lens with bellows on it. But I love the effect. It's it just creates some mystery to it, and there's a sense of emptiness, of its stillness, of a band. I don't know. I could list a lot of words that it makes me, how it makes me feel. So I put Joe's two together too, again, to look at similarities and differences. And, you know, they're both these landscape and a close-up of nature. So they're both organic shapes and lines and forms and textures. So there's not a straight, you know, there's no straight horizontal diagonal as we might find in architecture. It's all curvilinear organic lines. And I see a similar voice here, even though they're very different. They're also similar. Is Renee here? Oh, I just love this burst of color. And I had to put this one on black. I usually just try to keep most of my backgrounds on neutral gray, because if I tried to pick the right one for each image, it would just take me forever when I put a PowerPoint together. But this gray just did not work with Renee's piece. So it needed a black background, and that, you know, yellow, you know, not only do colors, you know, warm and cool colors have like temperature associations, they have visual associations. And that's what Joseph Albers was doing, you know, when he made those squares inside of squares, was that warm colors come forward to the viewer and cool colors recede. And painters in the, you know, as early as in the Renaissance knew that. They would paint things in the distance, the cool colors, and things in the foreground, warm colors, to create that, you know, sensation of space. And so this yellow just jumps right off of the screen. And you know, when I looked at it, I didn't know how it was done, and I didn't, you know, really care. It's abstract. It's about the color, and it's about movement, and it's about these lines. And, you know, to me, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is. It's, you know, but I can't ask you. Right?
I was in New Mexico, and the cottonwood trees were in full
Oh, I forgot the title.
foliage.
Yeah.
And so I went into a big grove of them, and it was just so junky that my pictures were not looking all that great. It was just too much. So I started moving my camera up and down.
I love it.
Intentional camera movement.
I love it. And I was on a meeting last night with a group of people, and we were talking about play, you know, like as adults, as grown-ups that we all are, that sometimes we forget to play, you know, to take chances, to like, and I see that in so much of the work here. And that's another thing that has, you know, that draws me to many of the pieces, is this, you know, I don't know, this risk that the photographer takes and presents something that the viewer cannot identify the object, you know, and so that's like non-objective art. You know, when I would teach art appreciation, I always knew as soon as I got to the abstract expressionists and I would put a Jackson Pollock painting on the wall, oh, there'd be all these sighs by students who said, but my 5-year-old can do that, you know, and all of this, you know, so how could it be valuable if a child could do it? And then we talk about, but, you know, that's how Picasso learned from children's art and African art. And by the way, you know, a lot of children's art is fantastic, you know, so it's like, so in the first non-objective paintings have been like Kandinsky and Mondrian in the teens and 20s, suddenly you couldn't identify a mountain or a horse or a, you know, it just became about color and lines and shapes and forms. So Emily's first one is daydreams. And I mean, talk about light. You know, this is such a great example of how the quality of the light, the direction of the light, the shapes that the light and the shadows are making are so important in this. And it, you know, it makes us remember that even photographing inside a place that's familiar to us, you know, we learn, I think, what time of the day the light comes through different windows, you know, and I know in my living room exactly when the light's going to come through the living room window and create a pattern of the Venetian blinds on the carpet, on the rug.
What's the
And-
name, Emily? The name, Daydream?
Daydreams. Yeah, and the title also then takes me to this place that looks comfortable and inviting and soft, like a comforter, and the pillow with that beautiful pattern on it. I mean, it's just inviting me to, you know, to do just that, to lie down and to daydream and feel the light on my face. So, and then Emily's second one, titled Magic. And I think I talked to you about this when we hung in the work, but I'm going to ask you again in a second. But when I first looked at it, I was imagining, because I've done this too, that it was photographed through a screen door or screen, you know, in a window. And that's what we're seeing, you know, this kind of grid there. And is that right? And I love that because it's subtle in how it sort of diffuses the detail of what's outside the door or window, but it also creates this pattern that is different from the pattern created by the, I guess, light reflecting on these trees. Was it at night? Was this a?
Was it night, the first snow?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really great. I mean, it's like that in between abstract and non-objective, where we can, as the viewer, we can kind of figure out what we're looking at, and yet it's not a specific place. It's not like you documented something specific. It's more, you know, about the light and the movement and the unusual contrast. And so I put Emily's together too, again, just to look at the two, and you know, both of them have a, well, light obviously is a like major element in both. That you know, and one on the right is more sort of comforting and stillness, and the one on the right creates more of a feeling of movement and activity. But each one is engaging because of the light source and the light captured. And Diane. So I admire street photographers so much because that's something that I've had a little experience with. I was in Chiapas, Mexico, a couple summers with a group from my church, and we were in the mountains and with the indigenous people of Chiapas, and I wanted to photograph the people, and luckily at that time, 2004 and 2005, I could still get SX70 film. So I had a Polaroid camera and a bunch of film with me so that I could, you know, if they were children, there was usually a parent nearby or an older sibling who would give me the okay. You know, they didn't speak Spanish, so they spoke a Tzotzil, which is a kind of a Mayan dialect. But anyway, they would give me the okay that I could take the picture with the Polaroid, so I could give them that image and they could watch that magic of the image, coming up. And then they would let me photograph them with my Hasselblad and then with my little first Nikon Coolpix. And so, yeah, I mean, and I know that students have had a hard time that I have taught too, photographing on the street. Because you have to kind of like make yourself sort of invisible, and yet, I know, well, going back to Cartier-Bresson, when he started using the Leica, the first Leicas were lots of chrome. And so I read that he used basically what we would call today like black masking tape, and taped everything on his camera so that when he did hold it up in front, it didn't draw attention. And sometimes he didn't look exactly through the viewfinder. He would, hold it here. So I don't know how you, if you have a method of working where you try not to draw attention to yourself. Can you share a little bit about that?
When I had a tilt lens with my Olympus, I don't care if I was 1 foot from you, you did not know. Now I have a tiny, tiny little Rico. I have to hold it. So you just go out with belief that you can do it, and then you do it.
Mhm.
So,
Well, this is, it's so much about time, that split second. And again, it reminds me of the fist bump. It's like almost like you couldn't have planned it any better for him to be in front of that plain background and for the skateboard to be at that angle and for his shadow to be there. It reminds me, like, when I would show Cartier-Bresson work to the students, I'd say, look at how these people line up almost as if he went down and posed them, but he didn't. He just waited patiently for things to line up, and then he would take the picture.
so what I'm most proud of are the 2 people in the back of the
Yeah.
My wife is reaching up towards that.
Yeah. What's that one?
Yeah.
Yes.
You've got a line there.
Exactly. That, yeah. And yes, thank you for bringing that up. I was gonna, the triangle, it's just, oh, and what was it called? I Can Fly. And the bouquet. I just fell in love with this. In this time that we're living, these random acts of kindness, just like, get to me. And you could photograph an act of kindness without the photograph being very interesting. But this is interesting. Visually, the colors, the line, the way that people are lining up, the background, everything, again, like your other ones, are just almost as if you positioned them. But it's about this, connection between these 2 people. I look at the man's eyes looking at the other man's eyes, and I really like it. So I put these 2 of yours together, and because they were both in color too, and I just sort of wanted to see how they would look together, and I kind of like it. I'm a big on diptychs and triptychs. When I give PowerPoints to the classes I teach online, I'm always putting 2 images next to each other or 3 images next to each other, and creating, something large, 2 pieces together sometimes have a conversation with each other in a manner of speaking. And so I liked the way these 2 work together. And then you could switch them, of course, but then, he would be moving out of the screen, and it might be an interesting dynamic, but I liked it this way. So, okay. Uh-huh.
question on the line,
Uh-huh.
from the chat, asking if we could make the screen for them bigger. They're seeing all the strip on either side. When you can play, can you still advance the slide? Or does it automatically start playing at the time? Does that make sense?
No, I think it's
Well-
on this one.
I mean,
And I'm talking about on the Zoom, whatever Carl is going through, I think is where
let me see if,
there's either a Zoom percentage there, or there's a play button up there that I thought if it goes into full screen mode.
right, I'm looking for
Play is
full
right there.
screen. What?
Play was right there a minute ago.
Where'd you see
See
it?
if that takes the scripts off of either side.
Oh, yeah. I think it does.
That's great.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well, we can go back through them at the end if people seeing this at home want to see them bigger.
And all you should have to do is advance, I hope.
Is Pat here? Pat. So, you know, what can I say? But, you know, it was such a, you know, the collision of the pandemic with this particular, you know, one of many injustices, just like seemed like a semi wreck. I mean, just thinking back to that period, I've seen on the news that we had hit something like 200,000 deaths, and then the next day, you know, a Black man was murdered, and I don't know, it just, so I appreciate this documentation of this. Was this in Nashville?
Yeah. No, it's been out.
Yeah, it's very moving. Jay Wayne. This is titled Home Office, and it made me laugh. And I like photographs that make me laugh in times of troubled. So this, you know, this idea of the cat, I assume, or maybe a dog's. It's a cat sitting on the keyboard. You know, you know, all of us who, you know, in one way or the other, moved home for our office for, you know, probably a year. You know, we had to make these adjustments, and sometimes the pets were involved. And sometimes the toddlers were involved, or, you know, and then formally, I mean, I love the texture, the circling of the tail, and the vantage point. Again, looking down, eliminating a horizon line, but making the background this kind of flattened space. Yeah, I mean, the detail in that, you know. You can, pardon me? Yeah. Yeah, that's really gorgeous. Michael, is Michael here?
It's on the Zoom.
Oh, he's on Zoom? Okay. So
Stuck in this box.
this one, My Love, I was just so intrigued by the mystery. You know, one of the things I like too about photographs are ones that make me question what's going on instead of giving me all the answers. Now, I think we can think about that too in terms of like, what kind of books do you like to read? You know, and do you like there to be a little bit of mystery, or do you like, you know, I don't know, I make sometimes analogies that don't make sense to other people, but I loved the mystery in this. I don't know what's in that bag, but it's like taped to a tree, and it's a rolled up piece of paper, and on the plastic is written in script, My Love. And so it just becomes this question mark for me that makes me wonder, who wrote it? Who's it for? Who's it to? What's inside it? You know, what's on that paper? Oh, My Love. It says what's written on here. I don't know if he wants to say anything about it, but he has a second one.
Hear me?
Splash.
Can anybody hear me?
I hear you.
You did-
Does he want to say
Can you hear me
anything
there?
about my love?
Can anybody hear me? Stuck in this box. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, uh-huh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was, what's the Arboretum?
Deerwood Arboretum.
Yeah, that's at the, we were walking in the Deerwood Arboretum, and if you walk down to the water at one spot, walking back from the water, this was on the tree. And I didn't want to touch it, because it was left for somebody, but I said, if we come back in a couple of weeks and it's still there, I'm going to open it up and see what's in it. And we came back in a couple of weeks and it had kind of come apart, or somebody had started opening it, and you could kind of see that there was something on the paper, but it was all kind of wet and disgusting. So I didn't really open it up. And in the end, I think I'm happier with the mystery myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when you find something like this, of course, I mean, you take a picture, take a picture of it. I mean, that's what we do. There's a part in one of Sally Mann's DVDs that What Remains, that in that it shows some clips of the past when she was photographing her kids for the immediate family book, and she said something like I would have to be a photographer in a straitjacket not to take these pictures. These kids, they're beautiful, they're and they're in nature, and she's a photographer, and how could she not? And yet they caused quite a controversy with some people because of the nudity, but it was like she said, in the end the answer to herself, and she knew the context in which they were taken. So yeah, you take a picture when you find something unusual like that. And this one, the movement, the gesture is called splash. So I can almost feel like what it would be like being this person with this water splashing on them. The sound, it's like I can almost hear the sound of the water. It just puts me into this place. And then I put the two of his together also. I mean, they're similar but different. I mean, they're, the one on the left is this kind of found object and kind of a sense of absence, like somebody left that there, but the person that it's for hasn't gotten it yet. And so there's this sort of anticipation. There's like an implied narrative. There's like a story to be told there, but we don't know the story. And the one on the right, it's just so much. There's just this action of this gesture of bending forward. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if a bunch of water was going to come down on my body, I wouldn't have my face turned up toward the water either. I would be, curled down to take the splash on the back, in the back of the head. So yeah, that's just really interesting. Durwood. There wasn't a lot of architecture in the group that I recall, but this one, I mean, it just stood out to me as this wonderful, juxtaposition of modern and modern architecture and a more historical, classical kind of architecture. And I wonder, was this taken in Nashville? Does anybody recognize
Yeah.
it? Okay, no. But yeah, I mean, it's a kind of shot I always want to make, and I'm in a car usually, and I'm like trying to say, oh no, I can't. So I'm just so glad that he did put himself in this position to capture that, that church, I guess, steeple. Yeah, there's a cross on the top in front of that very modern glass reflective surface. And then the sky, you couldn't have ordered a better sky. And yeah, sometimes bright blue skies are nice, but I often grab my camera when the skies are stormy. I find it much more interesting. Not only the sky more interesting, but oftentimes too, the saturation of things is more interesting with that diffused, cloudy light. Kimberly. Is Kimberly here?
She's online.
She's online. So yes, I love this piece, Kimberly. Again, these two colors, orange and blue are complementary colors. Again, back to my art appreciation days, but they're across from each other on the color wheel. And so orange and blue, yellow and purple, red and green, those are complementary colors. And they, when they're next to each other, they intensify one another. That's why if you notice, a lot of sports teams will be like purple and yellow. Those are complementary colors. Or blue and orange. They're complementary colors. They make each other more intense. And then just the way the composition, is divided almost in, not in, like a third and 2/3 by this wall. And then what's going on in here, and then those lights, I'm not sure if something's coming forward or what. Signs of private parking, watch for pedestrians, all of it. It's, again, it's a street shot, but it also sort of could tell a story, like who is inside this love, the taste the love place. All the details, all the signs, and it's just full of information. And I could look at it and not get tired of looking at it again and again. Night Light, that one is called. And Reserved, also Kimberly's, and I also really like this. And I forgot, I don't think I didn't. I forgot to put her two on the same page. I meant to, but I didn't think of doing that until today. And I thought I'd gotten them all, but we can flip back and forth because we can see that, they're both taken at a, parking garage. They're very different. This one, first of all, is monochromatic, and so the color is not a part of it. But what is a part of it is this negative space of there that we're seeing through to see those reserved signs, and, just the geometric, combination of diagonals, and, the texture of that concrete, and the signs make it, give it even more meaning. Is that what it's called? Reserved, yeah. And I'm only going to tell you a brief version of this story, but it makes me remember about 6 or 7 years ago, I came to Nashville from Clarksville to go to an exhibit downtown in that I can't remember, it's like an indoor mall kind of thing. The arcade, yeah. And so, and I drove myself from Clarksville. My husband was out of town. My 12-year-old son was at home. But anyway, I parked in a parking garage. I did not take a picture of where it was. I followed some people who said they were going to the arcade. So I just tagged along and went to the arcade. And then from there, some friends said, let's go out to dinner. You come with me, and then I'll take you back to your car later. And I mean, you see where this is going. So my friend takes me to go get my car, and we're driving around, and he said, well, what street is it on? I said, I don't know. I don't remember. And then, well, do you remember what it looked like? What the front? And all I could remember was that, there was a sign out front that said $20, and I knew that was expensive, but I was running late. So I took it, but there were no signs then. And so anyway, we drove around until about 11 o'clock. And finally I just said, I can't I can't do this anymore. And can I stay at your house? And I called my son, who was 12. For the first time, I said, are you okay staying alone tonight? And he said, yeah, what do you mean? So I stayed at my friend's house. The next morning, Sunday morning, we go downtown, we drive around. You would think that it would be clear. And I swear, it was like I was in the Twilight Zone. Like my car had just like disappeared. And then finally we passed that thing and I thought, wait a minute, that thing goes down. And so I said, let's try that. Because we had gone in several ones and the people with the ticket, they let us drive around and look for my car. And I swear I was not drinking on my way there. I mean, and so finally I said, try this one. So we went in and the thing went down and there's this woman. Oh goodness.
David Phelps?
No. Yes, I do. So my high school reunion is coming up this summer, my 50th. So that tells you what age I am, but that's who's on the committee. Anyway, we drove down. This woman came out and I said, can you just let me see if my car is here? And we drove in and there it was. And I was just like, so when I saw these, it was this flashback to that night and morning of hell where I thought my car had just like completely been like just vanished off the planet.
I bet you remember where they are now.
Is Emily here? Hi. So again, another really interesting street photograph of, the hiring, being circled. The woman, assuming, and with the dog on her lap, pink. The colors, are just so saturated and the warmth of the inside, the coolness of the outside. I love that combination.
Serving a brighter future. In
Oh.
the pandemic, the signs where it says we're hiring.
Right, I know. Yeah, I mean, it just captures the time, just so much. David Foster, he's on the call.
Yeah.
This
I'm
one
here.
titled Opening Question. Hi, David.
Hi.
Well, I mean, I just, this is another one I would say, I wish I'd seen this and I wish I'd taken it. I wish I'd been there so that I could have taken it. And, I mean, this spiral, it's nature at its, to me, it's, most beautiful and fluid, it just moves, in this circular motion. And I like that the color is really desaturated. So instead of it being instead of it being monochromatic, black, gray, and white, there's a little color left in it. So this kind of warm orange next to this cool sort of blue. I love that together. And of course, the narrow depth of field, which makes it so that whatever's in the background is not distracting from this beautiful I can't speak, spiraling. There's a name for these, right? Yeah. And my husband uses a close-up attachment on his iPhone and he loves it. He takes a walk every morning and he gets up really close to things, and the depth of field, I mean, it's just really tiny, but he gets really close, and so only a little bit is in focus and then everything else is out of focus. And so I don't know, what camera this was taken with, which really doesn't matter so much, I'm trying to remember, Man Ray said one time, you know, he was a surrealist painter and photographer, that, you know, something like, why ask what camera was used? You don't ask a writer what kind of typewriter he used, or a cook what kind of oven they used. You know, it was that thing. So, and also that I was thinking of that when I was looking at Gerald Fiegel, because that's a pinhole. And, you know, so you can take interesting, engaging, beautiful images with a box with a hole in it. So, you know, the idea that the more expensive the camera, the better the pictures, we all know that that's not true. Deshaun.
He's online.
Oh, online? Is that he, she?
See?
I'm here.
Hi, Deshaun. Well, the light, it's about light and it's about the shadow. You know, and I think what I'm seeing is the shadow, that the curtain is between me, the viewer, the camera, and the child. I'm thinking a girl, but it could be a boy. So there's this layer between, and maybe it's not a shadow, maybe it's her silhouette, maybe it's just backlit, and we're just seeing her shape by the light coming in a window, or it could be a cast shadow. You know, I don't know. And, you know, again, I don't always have to know that the answers, like going back to that thing again of kind of liking that unanswered question sometimes that leaves me, you know, coming back to look at it again. So what was the title? Present. And that's interesting. I like that. I mean, I was talking about some of them, you know, having a feeling of absence, like that bag hanging on the tree. But this, even though we're not seeing a detailed description of this child, there's a sense of presence. Somebody's there. We may only be seeing her shadow or her silhouette, but there's a presence. And I like that title, Present. I like the title. And I love the image too. It's just sometimes, you know, I struggle with titles. Thank goodness I'm married to an artist and he is much better at titling than I am. And sometimes I'll just show him something and I'll say, I'm entering that. I have to have a title. Give me one. Tell me. And, you know, sometimes it's just the name of the place. But I like seeing these titles. So Denny. Hi, Denny. So this is titled Same Dance, Different Song. I mean, again, I can't talk about this one without my hand just moving like that. It's like the light is just dancing on these fern leaves. And there's just so much implied movement, even though I don't think that they're moving, but I can ask since the photographer's here. No movement.
There's still, I want just kind of pops. I mean, there's editing, obviously.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? Another thing I like about all the work I've seen here, that whatever editing has been done is not like overtly, you know, overpowering. You know, that there's Photoshop and then there's Photoshop capital letters where that's all you see when you see an image. And I like that, you know, using digital technology too for myself. You know, I can dodge, I can burn, I can think about what I would do in the dark room. I can increase the contrast, I can decrease it, I can lighten the value, darken the value, but you know, I don't put things in that weren't there, but some people do. But anyway, we're talking about this piece, which is just lovely. It's just Yeah, it's like a dance. Same dance, different song. So we were on the same
I have
page.
to say, part of the title came, my high school reunion was this weekend, so we're about the same age. And much of the news, it kind of struck me that we've done this before, and it just keeps coming back. So it's kind of a positive, negative.
Mhm.
there too. So,
Interesting. Yeah. And I like that, oftentimes as photographers, we make the image, maybe we're lucky enough for it to be on a wall somewhere. A viewer sees it, but you're not there. And so now if you're there, the person can ask you, tell me a little bit about this. And you can say, well, I was doing this, and you can tell them the backstory of how you found it and what stopped you in your tracks and what made you take that picture. But if you're not there, the image has to, exist on its own without the backstory. And I mean, that's again, things I was looking for in jurying these are images that, that engaged me without knowing anything about the person who took it or the place or anything. So I love, the title to that too. It's perfect. Monty, I don't know. Another ICM, I suppose. I love it. I mean, when I'm teaching an online class now called Light Catchers, and most of the students are all using their iPhones. And so when we're talking about movement, well, I just found out about this app that I didn't know about that I can use to make me be able to control the shutter speed on my iPhone. I don't know. I'm always the last to know about these gadgets. I really. So when on this online class, this Light Catchers, even though the students were all shooting with iPhones instead of black and white film, I gave the same first assignment: light, vantage point, depth of field, and time. And so for time, because they really could not control a shutter speed to allow something to blur, they were doing, pans and ups and downs and twirls, or being in a car and going fast. I don't know if you guys know that Julianne Cost work. Oh my gosh. Wait, first of all, we all probably were doing this before she published her first book, window seat. Now, when I would fly, as long as I can remember, I always wanted a window seat so I could take pictures out of the window constantly, because I was terrified. I'm a horrible flyer. And so I always, if I took pictures, I somehow felt that I would not think about how the plane was gonna crash. So anyway, so I had all of these images I called, and I titled the series Window Seat. And then I go and buy this book by this woman who works for Adobe. Actually, she was at a conference. I was at SPE, a Society of Photographic Educators, and she was an Adobe person going around to talk about Lightroom and Photoshop and stuff. And then she showed that body of work, and I said, "Oh my God!" Again, it's like the selling man. She published it. So Billy, my husband, said, "You can't title your series Window Seat." She already did that. And I said, "Well, wait a minute, there's not just, is there a copyright on a title?" I don't know. So then I've been photographing out the passenger seat of my window. When we travel, my husband usually drives because he gets car sick if he's not driving. And so I either read to him in the car or I shoot out the window. And so I was getting these blurred images, and sometimes if I was using my DSLR, I would get a shutter speed where things would freeze, parts of it would blur, and I was doing this, and then Julianne Cost's new book came out called Passenger Seat, and they're gorgeous. I mean, if you haven't seen both of those books, you should see it. And what's interesting is that the text like the first one, window seat, the body of work, the photographs out the airplane windows are gorgeous. But then the text is about using Lightroom. And so it's a technical book, but it's, but it's also a beautiful monograph of that work. And then passenger seat, I'm teaching a class, an online class right now, where the students are creating their own body or their own series. They have to come up with an idea and develop the idea, the concept, and so the text in window seat, the first whole half of the book is about how to come up with ideas, how to develop an idea, how to make an idea not so wide, how to narrow things. And so I had the students buy that book for the class because everything I wanted to say about, how do you develop a series? I mean, she said it in that book. We must be sisters or something. And the second half of Passenger Seat is also about Lightroom because the books are about 8 years apart. So, the software has, changed quite a bit. But back to this one, talk about painterly. I mean, it could be, of course, mistaken for a painting, and that's neither positive or negative. It just is. It is what it is. And I like that about it. I mean, if I saw this and it was hanging on a wall, I'd want to come up close and see if it was a painting. Could I see a texture, behind the glass and the mat? Or if it, usually there's going to be a label that would say the medium. So if it said, digital photograph, then I wouldn't have to guess. But yeah, I love it. Oh, what was the title? Transition to Night. Very nice. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's about transition. Exactly. I love these titles. Kay, Gramming. Yes.
What was the app?
I'm sorry, what?
What was the app that you mentioned? You said you found a new app.
Oh, I have it written down somewhere. Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I may have to send it to Emily and have her share it with you guys. Because one of the light catchers in my group told us in a meeting on Sunday, you just have to get this app. And he said, well, it's free, but then if you want the increased whatever, then you have to pay for it. But I don't think it's very expensive.
It's called
What is it? Maybe.
Snapseed?
No, Snapseed is, yeah, maybe that, yeah. But I still think, I think it's a different name, but I'm sure there's more than one. There are apps now that, it just like changed my life as a teacher when students were shooting film with cameras that they would check out from the department. Most of them donated to the department from people who, were done with film cameras, and they were required to use a camera that had manual shutter speed and aperture. But a lot of them, the light meters have broken, and that's usually the first thing to go. And so in the past, I would say, well, you're going to have to buy a handheld light meter. Here's the Gaussian Pros, and maybe you can go and find a used one. But then all of a sudden, before I retired, I was like, Susan, there's an app on your phone you can use as a light meter. And I said, no, you're kidding. But that also, I mean, I was so old, I'm so old fashioned. I mean, I said in my room, my classroom, still had a blackboard. Now we could choose if we wanted a whiteboard and a marker or blackboard and chalk. And I said, yeah, old fashioned, I wanted chalk. And so I would write things on that board. And I, of course, expected people to get out their pencils and paper. And no, they got out their phones and they took a picture. And I was like, oh my gosh, where have I landed? It's like, how did this all happen? So Kay, is Kay here? there's just something about this that, well, first of all, I mean, the painting, if it's not a print of a Rembrandt, it looks like a Rembrandt.
It's not a print. It's
Isn't it?
my husband, or is it a Rembrandt? Nor is it a Rembrandt.
Wow, but do you see it?
It's
I
really
mean,
what-
how that Rembrandt lighting, that
Yeah,
kind of.
I have, frankly, haven't thought about it that way,
Mhm.
because it's just been in our family for
Uh-huh.
such a long time.
But the fact that it's there and the couch is set, the window, just the symmetry
The
of it.
symmetry is what I like.
Yes, I mean, the symmetry makes it formal. Even without that gold frame, even if it was something else, the symmetry creates a formal feeling, and asymmetry usually does the opposite, creates a feeling of informality but yeah, I mean, I just absolutely love this. And it's an interior. Again, I haven't seen a lot of interiors. We saw Emily's and I guess a few others, and this is also not easy to do. And I don't have to necessarily know how you do it, but we all know that it's difficult to expose for something inside and something outside with bright light and have detail in both. So I don't know if you did any burning or dodging. or-
Very, very little. I don't do hardly any, because I don't know how, and I'm not really interested in it.
No. Well, see, that's the thing. I taught film all the
Well,
way.
yeah, that's, this is a
till the end.
digital shot, but,
Yeah.
but mostly I do film and use a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
And I think I just saw it. I mean, before I shot it, I'm like, And that being my husband when he was a kid.
Well, I keep thinking Rembrandt self-portrait, so you can tell him I think he
Well,
looks like
and the name of it is Two Gun Buddy, and
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if you can see it real well. He's sitting there with two guns.
Oh. I wondered what the title referred to. Two Gun Buddy. Huh.
Because he's
Well-
a cowboy in that one.
It's just, yeah. Again, it just gives me these questions. I mean, it's beautiful to look at. Everything
Thank
about
you.
it, the texture, the color, the patterns, the symmetry, but it also then implies, it gives us question, who's in the painting? And what does this Two Gun Buddy have to do with, with what I'm seeing? And so, yeah, very, very nice. And yellow socks is Laura.
I am.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love this.
Well, I mean, I saved this for the end because it just seemed like it. Yeah. I mean, it was, it's both like humorous and then a little bit maybe not humorous. I mean, it's like whoever took this is in a hospital bed, I think, in a room in a hospital, given those socks that they all give you and then charge you $25 for it later. But anyway, I have to ask you the story behind this.
Oh, yeah, I have a dark sense of humor, clearly. Yeah, when you're waiting for a procedure and you're just kind of there and you don't have your contact lenses in and you're sort of like, okay, what are we gonna do? We're gonna take pictures.
Yep.
Yeah, so there you are. And then, and it wasn't anything particularly, I mean, so then thinking about the theme, it's like, it seems much more dire. This is not somebody with a fatal COVID.
Right.
It wasn't COVID at all. It was
Right.
Kind of a garden variety scheduled procedure that required anesthesia.
Mhm.
So there you are, waiting. Why not take some pictures?
Yeah, it's just,
And somehow I think if your feet had been straight,
Yeah,
or even gone in,
Yeah.
it's because they're,
I know, it's just like perfectly lined up, like
the
somebody
door
came
too.
in and said, oh, let me arrange these
We've got
things.
some equipment on the, on the one side to get a little asymmetry. The print printed more purplish, had a purple cast to it for some mysteries of
And it
picture
also
versus
may
on
be this.
screen.
Yeah,
gray.
these screens are a lot lighter
Color.
than what's on the screen.
Yeah, I probably should have
Um,
put this against a black, or that color of gray doesn't do justice to that color in your photo, but I do the same thing. I have my phone with me, and if I'm waiting for something,
Yeah.
whatever, I take pictures. And sometimes I know when I'm taking them, like when I go to flea markets with my husband, like I will just photograph odd things. And in my mind, I know I'm never going to do anything with these photos. What am I doing? Why am I shooting them? And then I remember Cartier-Bresson's quote, which I have in 2 slides, that says the camera is a sketchbook. And then I thought, like, oh yeah, people who are painters or draw, they keep a sketchbook, and those sketches, are important, that lead them to a final piece. And if you're lucky to get to see the sketchbook of Leonardo or a famous artist, the sketchbooks are, tell you more about the person. And so that's what I finally decided in my head. These photographs that I'm taking, that I'm not going to do anything with, I'm learning from them. I'm learning things about composition, about, I don't know. I'm bored and I'm whatever. But I love it. It's yeah. So I just sort of bookended these with Gerald's pinhole. And I have just a couple more. I decided to put 2 different people's pieces. I think I have just 3 of these diptychs. So 2 different people. And again, these 2 happen to be the 2 square images of the 30. And I do like them together. The square format creates a formality also. I love the color in both of them. These 2 together, of course, the action, kind of like action paintings like the Pollocks or the other guys. But anyway, one's monochromatic, one's color, but there's a similarity, but different. And these 2, I mean, this is a stretch, but I was looking at them in terms of, geometric shapes and forms in architecture, especially, the modern building versus organic lines and things found in nature. And then these 2 Emily's with, is it Keith? I think the color, the softness, I mean, they look so nice together. You guys should have, well, I don't know, maybe I suggested they be paired up in the Gazette, but probably not. But, and then these 2, it's like, they have to be together. And that is my presentation. So, thank you. It really was fun to do this, and I do want to thank you
so much.
I hope I didn't take up more time. I thought I was going to keep my phone nearby so I didn't go over, but thank you.
Yeah.
Entertained as we were tonight. Thank you so much.
I could talk about photographs forever. I mean, that was my favorite part of teaching, was just, showing the PowerPoints and saying, look at this, look at this. That was the favorite thing but my least favorite was fixing enlargers, ordering chemistry, making sure that, and at the end, before I retired, our department office assistant decided it was a good idea for all of the faculty to have to be in control of ordering their own supplies and taking the $90 student fee, figuring out what was purchased by that and what was purchased by this. Now, Joe knows I don't know Excel. I couldn't put together a chart, and she's coming to my workshop this Saturday, and thank goodness she took my information and put it into a chart for me, and I was so thank you. Yeah, it was the other stuff that I was ready to retire from, but teaching now without the grading, without the ordering of supplies and things, it's just a truly just enjoyment. I really love it. So maybe one day I'll see one of you in a workshop.
Yes.
All right, I guess it's everything. Thank you very much. Great presentation. Great photography, everybody.
Yeah.
Can't wait for the opening to see the show. May 5th, 4:30 to 6:30. Scarritt Bennett.
It's nice that we can have an opening.
Yeah.
A year ago, we wouldn't be.
Well, we are doing our.
All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the,
Yeah. I know, I had a shot.
end the meeting.
And we were supposed to go, my friend and I, and our gallery talk.